7 years ago, I was working right down the street from here at the CoStar Group. I was databasing commercial real estate. I have a degree in political science. My minor was in public and community service. Obviously, I was totally on the wrong path. I was completely confused. I was making great money, but I was totally confused. Well, professional wrestling has been a passion of mine for the better part of 30 years of my life. So I was on the road doing professional wrestling events later. So one day I come into work, and my boss says to me, Marcus, you know the real estate market is collapsing in on itself, and we're at a point where we don't necessarily see you ascending up the ladder to higher management, so we're going to have to let you go. And I'm like, wait, I have like $5 in my bank account, and this next check you're going to give me is going to be the last check, Talents, and you know, I'm 30, and I'm like, oh my God, and I can't tell my mother, because I'm 30 and you got laid off from your job, you don't have any aspirations in life, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with yourself? And I'm like, well, I don't really know. So that weekend I had a wrestling show, and happened I was going up the road, and I was going to West Virginia, and I was going to a Native American reservation where I'm a bad guy, and I manage a bunch of bad guys. We're taking on this 275-pound Native American wrestler who used to work for World Wrestling Entertainment. And match happens, big hubbub. I end up getting thrown, and I land on my back on the mat, and I'm looking up at the stars. And it's a beautiful, starry night, and there's a man staring down at me. And I go, this isn't what I want to do with the rest of my life. But I do like telling stories. I learned how telling stories from doing professional wrestling. And I'm like, okay, I like telling stories. Well, what else do I like? And that's what I like. I went back home and I sat down and I had an iPod. And on my iPod I had like 5,000 songs. Liked that. And I just started listening to music that I liked. And then it's like, I had a brand new car, and I had an iPod, and there was a concert for an artist that I was really into. She was an independent, underground rap artist, and I'm like, well, let me go to this show. And I go to the show, and I happen to be standing next to someone who's a writer. And I'm listening to what he's saying to his other writer friend about the show, and I'm just like, wow, they really know what they're talking about, do they? And I started to feel like, well, I mean, I've been writing for most of my life. I wrote in college, and I wrote outside of college. I've kind of dabbled, and I'm like, well, yeah, maybe I could. And I put it away. And then I went to another show. And then I went to another show. Remember, I'm laid off, and I have no aspiration of anything I want to do in life, so I can go to a lot of shows. So I went to shows for 100 straight days. I had a brand new car, I could go anywhere I wanted, and I just started to I went to one show and I met some people. Then I went to another show and I met some more people. And I like to meet people. I like telling stories, and tell stories and you meet people, and one starts to build on top of another, starts to build on top of another, starts to build on top of another. Then I'm just a nice person and I've been in the entertainment business before from doing wrestling stuff. And artists are like, wow, you're cool, like you're entertaining, like come backstage and talk to us about stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't really have any place to put this stuff, but I'll talk to you guys for sure, just hang out. And then it was like, okay, I had all this stuff building on top of each other, and I'm like, all right, so I'm going to open a blog. I had minimal money, I had a lot of aspiration, and had a lot of passion at that point for writing, because I sat down, I'm like, I'm going to start this blog, and it was a blog that intriguingly was called True Genius Requires Insanity. It's absolutely true. That's absolutely what it was. And I did that blog for the better part of 2 years, just writing every day. And that's a big part of all of this, is that you have to, and I love speaking in front of people who are in armed forces, who are veterans, because I don't have to tell you the importance of finding a process and doing the same process every day, and the worth in doing that. I've been doing this for 7 years. I have woken up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning every day for the last 7 years. Every day for the last 7 years, I scan the internet and I look for news. If you follow me on Facebook, if you follow me on Twitter, like Josh does. Josh, you follow me on Facebook and Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Every morning at about 6 a.m., what do you see on my feed?
It's horoscope?
And the news, right?
Yeah.
You see the news, right? I also follow the horoscope too, but you see the news. So every day it's like I read the news every day, and then I'll start writing about things. You know, like at first it was like I wasn't writing for anybody but myself, so I would actively go out and seek new tracks and write about new music and write about intriguing music, and then from there it's like when people started to catch on, it's like, okay, now I have an audience. Now I have an audience of people who are interested. So like now I'm going to mess with you. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of me. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of my personality. I'm like, okay, I'm going to write about like classic R&B and maybe some metal, maybe some like indie rock, maybe some of this other stuff that I'm into, and I'm going to intersperse that in. And then the crowd starts to grow a little bit more. And then the crowd starts to grow a little bit more. And around 2011, I was taking care of my mother who was ill. I was taking care of my uncle who was ill. So I was kind of like able to sustain on my savings, and this I cashed in my 401k, which is the worst idea ever. But I'll say that only because that's the level of passion I had. I was like, this is what I want to do. I know that it's going to require, there's something that when it comes to your passion that you have to understand as well. That it's going to require you to do something to extend past yourself. And again, I love speaking in front of people who are veterans and who are in the armed forces, because you understand the importance of extending past yourself. And you understand the necessity of, okay, well, there is an extra 10 to 50% past 100% that a human body and a human mind can reach that you have to touch. So 2011 comes along, watching the city paper starts. There's a friend of mine named Philippa Hughes who had a blog called the Pink Line Project. I wrote about the arts for a while. And Brightest Young Things is a blog out of DC that I did some music writing about as well. So I just started to build this network. And always everything interconnects. It's another lesson. Everything is connected. I'm writing for here, and it affects my audience over here. I'm writing over here, it affects my audience over there. Then I started to branch out. I wrote for a couple of blogs up in New York, and they were interested in my stuff. And I was just like, okay, and this is all just me. Every time I get a contact with somebody, I immediately reach out to them on social media or wherever. I follow them on social media. I still do this to this day. I follow them on social media. I send them a follow-up email, and then 2 weeks later, I send them another email just to make sure they got my first one. And it's always the second email, if they haven't responded to the first one, it's a lot funnier, because it's like, hey man, I know you're busy, man, because I'm busy too, man, but send me an email back. And most people do. And people that don't, you're like, okay, well, at some point you'll be important to me, but you keep it moving. So let's fast forward now to 2013. 2013, I'm working at all of this networking and building and writing and building and doing the same thing literally every day. I end up becoming the executive director of a recording studio in Washington, D.C. That also has an online streaming radio station. How did I do this? Because I did literally the exact same thing every day, and I built a network, and I just kept reaching out, and it's like a ladder. And then you get to a point, and you're like, oh, well, this wonderful opportunity came to be. And I did that, and I got the radio station off the ground literally through my contacts. If my boss, I don't work there anymore, but if my boss was standing right next to me, he'd say, as he always said, your network is your net worth. And I'm like, okay, so blogging has gotten to a point, and media has gotten to a point, and content has gotten to a point. Content is the magic word. Whether it's writing or video or whatever you're doing, it's all content, because when you put it online, access to things online is different than access to things traditionally. It's different than picking up a physical newspaper or turning on your TV set. Everybody can access everything via typing and via clicking. Everything. Words, video, everything. It's all the same, so it's content. So when content becomes a thing, I'm like, oh, I could do content. I've been doing content for the last 5 years of my life. So you mean to tell me that you'll just pay me to sit and write all day for 10 hours, the same thing I was doing 5 years ago. Because again, I never changed the process. I did the same thing every day. So I'm like, okay, so we're at a point now where everything's content, where I can write every day and do that, and it'll just perpetuate itself again. Sign me up, please. So I started reaching out to various sites and blogs and people around the world and on the internet and off the internet, and just like, okay, I can do content for you since this is a hot thing that you want. You want a lot of little pieces every day. I'm your guy. And I have this whole catalog of work that I could show you for the last 5 years of me doing this exact thing. And so that's where I am right now. Right now, believe it or not, I contribute to at least 15 different sites or print publications worldwide.